But when a kid from a very early age starts recognizing those patterns of like, I'm the kid whose parents always have to come in and talk to the teacher, right? And it says on my report card this, and I always get the feedback, you know, these kinds of things. They start to believe that they can't do it, right? It becomes a part of their identity. So I'm not telling you how you should do your report cards or not. I'm just saying, like, be thoughtful kind of about, you know, what information is useful and how do we share that information in a way that helps us get where we want to get, right? Helps us support that child in a way that, you know, is meaningful. Because I mean, ultimately that's the goal, right? Like, I understand you want to be honest because you want to be able to, if we're not honest, then we can't support the child. We can't do the, you know, at university, when I worked with the medical school students, a lot of them didn't want to be diagnosed. And I was like, but if you don't get a diagnosis, I can't give you the support and accommodations that you know you need. And I'm pretty sure you need, and I believe you. But without the diagnosis, we can't do any of that. So it is important to be honest because it helps us get to that diagnostic path, right? That's why it takes so long sometimes. Teachers don't want to say something negative to the parents, right? Because they're like, not my kid. I'm sure you've never experienced that. And, you know, and vice versa, people, there's a lot of stigma attached to it. So the honesty piece is really important. It's just how do we do that?
Can I say?
Yeah.
You know, just adding to the honesty piece there, in terms of the importance of that being a benchmark, because if you have a child who's developmentally at 4.5 in your class of 1 to 6.5, you still have to see what measure where they've come in that year. So we don't have something to, I guess, act as that initial benchmark. You don't really know how far they're coming that year. You don't know what
Yeah, you
this
want to be able to
is.
measure the growth,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so yeah, conversations for you all to have later. So just things to think about. Okay, so there's a lot of different resources, a lot of different models. These tend to be more diagnostic tools. Do you have anybody in your school that does any of these diagnostic tools for ADHD or executive functions? No. Okay, so the one that I think is most useful is this Smart but Scattered. I'm going to skip to that one. Okay, so these are all. So Smart but Scattered, I brought a couple of them with me. They have a whole series. So this is the like kind of general kids one. This is the teens, kind of high school age one. And then they actually wrote one more for university students. This is Smart but Scattered and Stalled. Okay, so it's university students. But what I like about these is they have assessments. If you buy the ebook, you get the electronic copies of the tools. But they have assessment tools in the books. And for the younger kids, it would be like a parent and a teacher filling it out. And for the teenagers, it would be a parent and the child filling it out. And they basically evaluate themselves and rate themselves on these 11 executive function skills. And that can start the conversation. So I like that it's a free tool. It's reliable and valid. They've published lots of studies about it. But it's not locked behind like a clinician's access point. So response inhibition, right? The capacity to think before you act. That's a challenge for all kids, right? That's a brain development thing. We all eventually, hopefully, get there. But that 30% deficit means some kids get there later. Working memory, right? That ability to remember a couple of things. It's really important in math or in kind of recall sorts of situations, but it's also important in everyday life. Remembering those small things and being able to put them together and hold them in your mind long enough to be able to retrieve it. So you don't have to put it into long-term storage, but just those simple things. So like if you, this is one of the signs that I was worried about with my younger daughter, and I couldn't figure out whether it was like an auditory processing thing or if it was working memory. And sometimes it's really hard to tease those things out, but I would tell her, you know, like, okay, go do these 3 things, right? Like, go upstairs, find your jacket, put your shoes on, and let's go. And she would go upstairs, and she would find her jacket, and then, whoop, off to something else. Why did I understand? Like, this was so simple. Go upstairs, get your jacket, put your shoes on, let's go, right? Come on, let's go. And and she is like painting. You don't have your shoes on. Oh, right, we were going. You know, and it's like then she remembers. But her working memory literally was like two things. So I realized as a parent, I had to start telling her one or two things at a time, right? So I would say, go upstairs and get your jacket. And then I'd wait, and I'd be like, hey, Annabelle, come downstairs, right? And then she'd come downstairs and be like, okay, put your shoes on and grab your bag. Okay, let's go, right? And if I broke it down into those small chunks, she could do it. But if I tried to tell her 3 or 4 things at a time that any other kid her age could do, she couldn't. It was like, you know, taking a shower or something. Like, we're leaving. But emotional control, right? Some kids have big emotions, right? Big emotions. And they kind of, feels like they come out of nowhere. They go from here to here really quickly. Or the frustration kinds of builds, and neurotypical kids can kind of release the pressure a little bit, right? Like something frustrating happens, you release the pressure. Something frustrating happens, you release the pressure. Kids with poor executive functioning skills in this area have no release valve. It just builds and builds and builds until it explodes. We'll talk about what to do about some of these things in a minute. So sustained attention, right? These are things that we know. Seat work, right? Sit at your desk, do this work quietly, please, right? Some of these kids are just gone. Obviously different by age, but that ability to really focus on something. And specifically with ADHD kids, it's the ability to focus on something they have no interest in focusing on, right? So one of the things that people say, like, oh, well, you can't possibly have ADHD, you can play video games for 5 hours straight. The ADHD brain is wired to things that they're interested in, because you get the dopamine response, you get the neurotransmitter response to those things. But things that you are not interested in at all, really challenging. And so that's where a lot of times they struggle with sustained attention and also task initiation, right? My younger daughter has much more mild case. I think she's probably one of those ones who will outgrow it. I don't think she will need support, probably maybe not even all the way through high school, we'll see. But my older daughter, forever. But my younger daughter, her doctor was like, told my younger daughter, like, you may outgrow this in a few years. I said, yeah, there's no hope for you. They have a good relationship, so he can say that to her, and you know she's not offended. But he literally said, like, no hope for you. There's going to be a lifelong thing for you. But my younger daughter can come home. She knows she has homework. She sits down, starts it, gets it done, puts it back in the backpack. It's good. My older daughter, forget it. Like, she's just never there. And part of it is this task initiation of, you know, she'll get to it in a minute, after she eats, after she does this, after she does this. And sometimes it comes back to her, but getting started on something that feels really boring or not meaningful is incredibly hard. Right? My husband's like, I just don't understand, why can't she just do it? She knows she has to do it, why can't she just do it? I can't either, so I can't help you here. But most of us, neurotypicals, like, you know you need to do something, you do it, you get it done. Task initiation.
Would the task initiation go along with the avoidance? Because that's the best way to get them to eat.
Yeah.
Evan, you need to